some. Now, getting back to these companies that close down American factories, lay off American workers, and reopen factories in these third world countries. Some people may think that this is radical, but I have a word for such corporation owners, traders. Look at, the lack of jobs. Look at what it's doing to our country. Like, all of these people on the street begging for money. All of these people, who don't even believe in getting a good education these days because of all this talk about cutting corners. It's taken away the prestige. It's humiliating us with other countries. So, just look at what happened in Flint, Michigan with that with the GM Motors. Now, just about everyone in Flint, Michigan worked for GM Motors in the late 80s. And they were actually making good profit. But what happened was, Roger Smith, he believes in two things. One, that profit is more important than people, and two, that companies are not socially responsible for they're not socially responsible for their actions. So what does he decide to do? So that he can make more profit in some other country, he closes down all of the factories. He closes down the entire plant, in Flint, Michigan. And then automatically you see high crime, you see high drug rates, you see high poverty. Most of the people in Flint, Michigan right now are on welfare. And it doesn't have to be this way. People should not be on welfare. People should be working. And these same individuals like Roger Smith, they see these people on welfare, they see these people on the streets, and they're like, why don't we just get a job? They could have had a job! You took them away! See, all they do is look within their own world. People like Roger Smith. Come on. How can you say, why don't they get a job, when whenever they try to get a job, they're turned away? Where whenever they do get a job, they don't have it for long because the company's being closed down and sent to some other country. Get a job indeed. Yes, people like Roger Smith in a fair world would be thrown in prison for treason. Because when you take away the jobs, when you take away a man's right to be self-motivated, to provide for his family, then you create a monster. You create animals. Animals who do horrible things. Animals who sometimes can't even help themselves. Traitors. Treason. They are guilty of treason. And now, for economics. Now, these are some other points where I've noticed that society is being dehumanized. For instance, now I live in Forest Park, Illinois, and luckily we still have quite a few mom and pop stores. Even though we do have a Walmart, we still have these small stores that are owned by families, that are not big boxes. But, who knows, within 20 years they may be gone too, because what happens is you have these huge businesses who come into these towns that are doing well for themselves, and then basically sometimes overnight you have people who have to close up shop because they're offering prices that are very low compared to what's offered at these small businesses, because they can afford to. So, I believe in capitalism, but I don't believe in uber capitalism. Capitalism run amok. I believe in the capitalism where everyone gets a fair shot. and where the billionaires aren't ruining everything. That's another thing. And then also there's health insurance. Now sure, they passed the reform and Obama signed it. However, that's great news for children. But for single adults like me, I won't get to get any, unless I can finally find a job that offers health insurance, I won't be able to benefit under that plan for 4 years, until 2014. And until then, people are going to turn me away because of these quote-unquote pre-existing conditions. See, that's why I admit I'm sort of prejudiced towards insurance providers, because all they do is cheat people. They'll take more than they give, basically. Not all, but some. So, again, it's like profit is more important than a person's health. Just look at that movie John Q. with Denzel Washington, where that father, he had coverage, but then they just changed providers and whatnot. His son needed some health insurance so that he could get surgery. But he can't have that surgery because the insurance companies won't cover him. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. And then finally, there's the whole thing with gentrification. Now, some gentrification actually makes sense. It's good. But one thing I do not like about gentrification is where you go into these neighborhoods where people, they finally have a good community, they're doing well for themselves, but then these rich developers, they come in and basically they've got the mayor, city council in their pocket, because when these developers, when they see some good land from old buildings, guess what happens? Automatically, property taxes go up. The landlords, they have to charge more in order to keep their heads above water. And when the tenants can't afford it, they move out. The landlords have to sell the building to the developer, who tears it down. Same thing with homeowners. In these same areas, property taxes go up. They can't afford it anymore, so they sell their houses to the developers. The developers tear the houses down, and then they basically build these condos and whatnot that the average person in that community cannot afford. So it's basically kicking people out of their own communities. I mean, just look what happened with Cabrini Green. Mind you, that was a horrible area, but and sort of make it okay, they make it so that it's a mixed, some of their buildings are mixed income, not all, but some. So others are being kicked out of their neighborhoods. Since when do you see these developers building good housing in these old neighborhoods for people who actually afford it, for the low-income individuals who won't ruin the property? I mean, I will admit there are some bad apples, and they ruin the entire bunch, where when someone offers low-income housing, you have some unsavory characters who come in, and then they sort of mess up the property. But not every person is like that. For every crumb that ruins his apartment, you have 10 hard-working individuals who could use such housing. But again, in an uber-capitalist society, if one apple is bad, you cut down the entire tree, because people don't matter. All that matters is profit. All that matters is the uber-capitalist. So these are just a few of many ways in which society is being dehumanized, where everything it just comes down to profit and materialism. So we have gone over, but I'm going to split this into 2 videos. I am Devin Love Andrews. This has been 2 cents in 10 minutes, or rather 20 minutes by this point, and I will see you next week. Next week we will be talking about the illusions of race and ethnicity under the dehumanization of society. Take care.